Hello, this is Royce Candy Brew, candidate for Michigan's 12th Congressional District, here with another episode of Dark Horse Politics Podcast, where we talk about all things politics and culture. And in this episode, I've been away from you for 2 weeks, and so much has happened where my emotions have been up, they have been down, they have been all around. I'm here to talk to you today about two things. One of them is how Republicans weaponize race. I had to talk about this, and I want to talk about it earlier. It's so important for you to understand how they weaponize race. And so when you understand that, it's going to help set the context for what we talk about next. And that is the dropping out of Joe Biden and the most likely the ascension of Kamala Harris to the top of the ticket for president for 2024. You're going to have to understand race to understand what's going to happen next so that we can be prepared for what's next. Okay, everybody, let's learn something. This may be, in this episode, the discussion of how Republicans weaponize race may be one of the most important discussions that you are going to hear from me in regards to how race is used in politics by the Republican Party. It's going to even elucidate to some degree Byron Donalds' discussion of Jim Crow and the African-American family. It's going to help you understand this discussion of CRT. It's going to help you understand this discussion of woke. It's going to help you understand this discussion of DEI. All of them are the same thing. CRT. They in real life, they aren't the same thing, but Republicans are using them with the same effect. They have weaponized race, and they have learned this from this guy that you're going to hear from in a moment. And his name is Lee Atwater. And Lee Atwater got caught, I don't even want to call it a hot mic or what have you, but he was caught talking about how it is that you weaponize race. He said that you can't use the N-word. So excuse me, because the N-word is going to be in here. He said he was a Republican strategist who worked with Reagan. He said you can't use the N-word. Can't use that anymore. So now what you have to do is you have to get words that relate to the Black experience and infuse them with negative meaning. You infuse them with the power to denigrate, to disparage, to disrespect African Americans. And instead of using the N-word, you use those words. So when you hear the word DEI, when you hear the word woke, when you hear critical race theory, when you hear these terms, it is another way in the contemporary politics of using the N-word. Now, that's going to be hard for some of you guys to understand until you hear this video. Okay? Take a look.
Here's how I would approach that issue as a statistician or a political scientist, or no, as a psychologist, which I'm not, is how abstract you handle the race thing. In other words, you start out, and now y'all aren't quoting me on this.
I won't hear it.
You start out in 1954 by saying nigger, nigger, nigger. By 1968, you can't say nigger. That hurts your backfire. So you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract now. You're talking about cutting taxes and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things, and the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites. And subconsciously, maybe that is part of it. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that if it is getting that abstract and that coded, that we're doing away with the racial problem one way or the other. You follow me? Because obviously sitting around saying, we want to cut taxes, we want to cut this, and we want, is much more abstract than even the busing thing. And a hell of a lot more abstract than nigger, you know. So any way you look at it, race is coming on the back burner.
So as you hear him go through this, he says that in the 60s, you could use the N-word. You can use the N-word. And I apologize for all of those who are offended by hearing the word. Sorry about that. You can hear in the N-word. But then what you have to do is you have to change that word to say other things that relate to what that word is supposed to do. And that's supposed to hurt Black people. Right? And so you use it, and he started talking about, in that time, forced busing. And then he went on to the familiar thing that we hear all the time. And this is, listen to me. What's so powerful about this? This is 40 years ago that he said this. How many times do you hear Republicans talk about cutting taxes? And so you hear from the racists how it is that those things are meant to be subconscious or conscious for certain people on how it is that you hurt African Americans. And so he's saying that you deal with the race thing that way. And what's the race thing? The race thing is making sure that African Americans aren't doing well. That's the race thing. I didn't make this up. I didn't make this up. I didn't make up this recording. I didn't make up this guy. The first time I heard it, lights went off, bells went off. I was like, wow. And so what you see is the way that Republicans, whatever will be the next thing that relates to Black people, a word, a phrase, they will take it, co-opt it, and use it. For instance, the term woke. We know that 100 years ago, and I got a video on my computer of a historian, David Beschloss, talking about what woke meant 100 years ago, that African Americans during a time of severe racial violence would tell their children before they left the house that they had to be woke.
The word woke was used by Black parents in the early 20th century to warn their children when they went out of the house, be woke, be careful, be alert, make sure that you don't get lynched or beaten up or arrested falsely. And since that time, at least according to the best dictionaries, woke means the state of being alert to injustice, prejudice, racial or social discrimination. So what Ron DeSantis and others are saying, they're for discrimination, they're for injustice.
Emmett Till's mom, when he was leaving Chicago, in many ways was telling him to be woke. Emmett, the way that you act up here, you can't act down there because of the potential for racial violence. And so that's a term that has been in the African-American lexicon for 100 years. A phrase, phraseology, a word. But then racists who happen to be Republican used it and said, okay, how can we use it? And they took the word, and now in Project 2025, it talks about woke agenda. Think about why it says that. And who are the people that are saying that? When they use the word woke, they are invoking negative disparagement about African Americans, who, in the words of one of them, Lee Atwater, to hurt African Americans more. I didn't make this up. I just recognized it. Being a social studies and an English teacher, using history and critical literacy to understand and listen how they take words and use it. For instance, that's why I don't use the word cancel culture, because they took it, made it into a thing that has nothing to do about race, but they took it and made it into a thing. I don't use cancel culture because the way that the word comes into American political lexicon is when Josh Hawley was confronted and to be made accountable by his seemingly being in cahoots with the January 6 rioters, that he said, you're not going to cancel me. And then it became a whole word a whole phrase, cancel culture, and now people are using the word or the phrase coming from an insurrection.
This is the left looking to cancel everyone they don't approve of. I will fight this cancel culture with everything I have. We'll see you in court.
Let me say it as straight as I can. You've had a rough couple of weeks. Tell me what's going on, and in that context of cancel culture.
Well, I think we're really seeing here the left, many people on the left feel very emboldened right now, and they are trying to shut down conservative voices all across the country and from all different backgrounds. Conservative voices in politics, conservative voices in media, conservative voices in the faith community, and it's really the liberal woke mob.
I don't use it. Like I won't use the term woke anymore since they have co-opted, but I'll let you know where it comes from. And so that is extremely important for you to know. And while we are at it, I want to make sure that you understand that all throughout Project 2025, they are talking about a woke agenda, woke ideology. People like Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the governor of Arkansas, talks about woke this.
Today, we're taking a stand against woke nonsense. What frankly started as a fad among a few grad students has seeped down into corporations, the healthcare industry, and increasingly state government.
Ron DeSantis, the failed Republican presidential candidate, woke this, woke that. They use woke all the time.
You frequently use the term woke, and you recently said that the word means different things to different people. What does it mean to you?
Woke is a form of cultural Marxism. It's about taking individuality, merit, and achievement and subordinating that to a political agenda based on identity politics. It is effectively displacing the truth in favor of ideology. And I think it's important that we fight against that because our society does need to be rooted in truth. Don't tell me that a man can get pregnant and expect me to believe that. That is not true, and we can't govern our society based on things that are not true. Second, when that ideology takes hold of institutions, it corrodes the institutions and it produces bad results. For example, when you have woke overtake parts of the economy with things like ESG, they attack energy, they attack other things. The average person ends up poorer as a result of that. When woke overtakes education, you get indoctrination and students end up performing worse as a result of that. When you have ideological prosecutors get into office in cities like San Francisco, they stop prosecuting criminals. The inmates run the asylum. The average person ends up less safe as a result of that. Every jurisdiction in this country that has indulged in this type of leftism, city or state, has failed. How do I know that? Because people that are fleeing are coming to my state in Florida and they're telling me the story about it. So this is not just an academic debate. It's, do we want policy based on tried and true principles, enduring principles that have made our country great? Or are we going to go on some ideological joyride, let people out of prison, do this, do that, and see our quality of life be destroyed? Woke needs to die.
What they are doing is the dog whistle. What they are doing is weaponizing race to hurt African Americans. The plight of people of color. Woke this, woke that. What are you talking about? And so I don't use that term anymore. But it is important for you to understand what is going on. So whenever you hear them say CRT, critical race theory, because critical race theory isn't what it is that they say it is. Critical race theory is a very focused, narrow discussion of the impact of the law on race. If you're talking about Brown versus Board of Education, Topeka, Kansas, that could be considered critical race theory. If you're talking about the Dobbs decision impact on African American or women of color, that can be considered critical race theory, or even something that they never talk about called critical race feminism. If you talk about the impact of the 13th Amendment on African Americans, that could be considered critical race theory. Critical race theory is not general Black history. Critical race theory is a part of Black history, but it is not Rosa Parks. Right? It is not Harriet Tubman. That's not what critical race theory is. right? So they co-opt it, change it, infuse it with negative meaning, and use it to hurt African Americans. The same thing with woke. The same thing now you are seeing with DEI, a DEI hire, which they are changing because it is important for you to understand the main way that they do it. They take a term that they know you don't know, and they infuse it with the meaning that they want to have with it, and it's a derogatory meaning for African Americans and people of color. Critical race theory don't mean what they say critical race theory means. Woke doesn't mean what they say woke meant, and DEI doesn't mean what DEI means. They are trying to say that DEI means unqualified African American, and that's not what that means. America actually happens to be a DEI country. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm gonna talk about that at another time. I don't want to talk about that in this video. But America has always been DEI. But the diversity, the equity, and inclusion has never been for people of color. It's been DEI for usually white, rich, male landowners. That's the diversity that you're going to get. And that's the only thing they try to keep equitable. And the only thing they're trying to include is those folks. Right? That's the American history. But I'll talk about that in another episode. So I want you to understand what is coming next in regards to, or think about whenever you hear woke, whenever you hear CRT, whenever you hear, I want you to be critical and ask yourself, how are they using this term to help or to hurt African Americans? It's never to help African Americans or people of color. It's always in some type of way to manipulate the mind of other people so that they have a negative opinion of African American people. Because the whole point of Republican politics today is to show is grievance, is separation, is of anger, of something's not fair. They're taking this away from us. That's all Republican politics are now. And they want to divide people because they know that the majority of people who are Republicans in this country today have more in common with me and other people who are left-leaning and Democratic-minded than they do with the hyper-rich. That's the whole deal. It's separation and to keep us separated. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is about the stepping down of Joe Biden in regards to Kamala Harris. K-12 educators, are you looking for a way to increase the performance academically of your students and to improve their behavior so that they're able to be successful inside and outside the classroom? Well, if you are, I have an online course that is starting in the month of July. Stay tuned for details. The interview playing behind me is a recent interview that Joe Biden did after the one he did with George Stephanopoulos with Lester Holt. And it was so, just like the one with George Stephanopoulos, it was so hard to watch. The type of questions that were being asked were so unfair. They were just like, if they were basically saying, okay, why don't you agree with the fact that we don't believe that you can't do it? That's basically what the questions were. And I'm not even going to go over them. I'm not going to dignify them. But, I thought that President Biden did a better job, even in the Stephanopoulos interview. And he went on to speak at the NAACP, did a banging job. Go watch that speech that Joe Biden gave for the NAACP at the National Convention in Las Vegas. It was phenomenal. But what you can see was that the mainstream media was definitely against Joe Biden continuing. And it was going to be a continual hindrance. I'm not a quitter. I'm a fighter. And so the fact of giving up, I'm not going to give up just because you say give up. Especially if I'm good, especially if I'm good for the country and I'm better than the other guy, I would have never given up. This was sort of like the tide for me. Then Joe Biden will go on to get COVID. And this was within the 2 weeks where I didn't produce a podcast because I was just up and down and so many things were happening. I'm not going to talk about the alleged assassination attempt because that's what everyone's saying, that it was assassination attempt. I'm not going to say how, and let me be clear about this. For those of you that know, I'm a government contractor, been a government contractor for 20 years. I have been in the most secure buildings in the world. And that's not hyperbole. I have been in the National Security Administration, the NSA. I have been in that building on Fort Meade. I've been in there. I have been inside of the Hoover Building, Department of Justice headquarters in Washington, D.C. I have been inside of ATF. I have been on the Fort Knox military base in Kentucky. I've been to these places. I've been inside of the Department of Agriculture. I've been inside NASA headquarters. I have been inside of NASA at the Cape Canaveral Center, the Kennedy Center at Cape Canaveral. So I've been inside of the most secure buildings. I've been inside NRO, National Reconnaissance Office. I've been inside of the most secure buildings in the world. I've been to 6 presidential rallies. I think it was three or four for Barack Obama and 2 or 3 for Joe Biden. And I've seen the Secret Service security. Listen to me, people. The Secret Service is much more, they are much more competent than what we saw in that alleged assassination attempt. They're just more competent in that. The Secret Service is going to give up the high ground in a situation where the roof is only 130 yards away from the protectee. I can't even see that happening in a movie. I don't see those type of mistakes, that America making those type of mistakes. And you just have to forgive me. Now, was it staged? Was it this? Is that? I'm not going to get into it. But I will get into you that I just don't see America making mistakes like that. I don't see the Secret Service making mistakes like that. I don't see the Secret Service giving the high ground to anybody that they're in regards to having a protectee be in the area and they're giving up the high ground. I just don't see that happen. Nope. But what that had done was cause a situation where those are some of the things going on in the news. Joe Biden gets COVID, and then he steps down. And so now what I want to talk about is the ascension of Kamala Harris. And I wanted to have that discussion about race and how the right weaponizes race before we talk about Kamala Harris, because she is a woman of color. And she is a woman. Now, I talked about in a previous podcast a book called Blind Spot, Hidden Biases of Good People. And I want you to be on the lookout for people talking about her as a woman and how she is not capable, and people her as a person of color, African-American, Indian person, not being capable. And they're going to use the DEI. And remember what that means when they say that, right?
I want to play what's been going on over on Capitol Hill. This is how they've been talking about the vice president.
Biden said, first off, he said he's going to hire a black female for vice president, and that he just skipped over. What about white females? What about any other group? When you go down that route, you take mediocrity, and that's what they have right now as a vice president. 100%. She was a DEI hire. Her record is abysmal at best.
First, it's the DEI hire part first, and then it's the record. But they can't help themselves but going at the race part of this.
Let me just say something here.
Please do.
This is going to work out badly because they worked very hard to attract black men into the Republican Party. They worked very hard to attract Latin men into the Republican Party. And they were getting a little bit of momentum there. There were a lot of black men who were saying, no, the Democrats don't do anything for us, and Biden's weak, and they're starting to look over there at the Republican Party. You start insulting black women, you're gonna see something you haven't seen before. Black men are not gonna put up with that. I want to send a warning, as clear as I can. I was on a phone call with 20,000 black men. The word protect came up about 1,000 times. Protect this sister. Protect this sister. We're going to protect her. Protect her. You're about to see something you haven't seen before. Look, people messed around with Hillary Clinton and said a bunch of mean stuff to her. Black men set that out. We won't set this out. So I don't think that the Republican Party understands that all the work that they did trying to get us over there, two more days of this, it's going to be a problem.
Look, and the strategy is in part also to draw a wedge between black men and black women, which if you listen to Van, he's saying that's not going to work, but that is the strategy, is to say, oh, they're so focused on women, black women, they're not focused on you.
To disparage her, to hurt her situation, to become the leader of the free world. Now, here is why I have come to believe not only is this a good idea, that this is going to be more and easily doable than the Biden-Harris ticket, than the Harris. Listen to me very closely. If I can pick it, listen to me. The ticket of Harris and Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, does several things. And let me just start with Pennsylvania is a battleground state. So having the governor of Pennsylvania on the ticket to win Pennsylvania makes it then harder for President Trump again to win. And here's some things that happen when you get a Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket. Number one, you're going to get some women. I don't know how many. Guess what? We don't need to. In 2020, I think around 55% of white women voted for Trump. In 2016, I think it was around 52% of white women voted for Trump. If you get 2 percentage points more of white women voting for Kamala Harris, or 3, that's the race. Listen to me closely. That's the race. It came down to 700,000 votes in 5 different states. If you get 2 or 3 more percentage points of white women voting, it's not a possible win. And so you have to think about, how has Trump, how does this changing improve Trump's ability to win? It doesn't. All of his negatives, they get accentuated, right? And so you think about Kamala Harris being a woman, she's going to get more woman votes than Joe Biden. Kamala Harris is going to get the young vote because Biden is now out. Also in Michigan, most likely you're going to get more Middle Eastern people voting for Kamala Harris than Joe Biden because they saw it as Biden. And if you try to connect them, I'm telling you, as a politician, what the Harris campaign is going to say, it's not my decision, it's Joe Biden's decision. That's what they're going to do and ride it out to November. They're going to say it's his decision, not my decision. And that's just enough to get some votes. You don't need to get them all back. You just need to get some of them back. And with getting young people and then getting Detroit. Listen, let me tell you closely about Detroit. Only 50% of people in Detroit voted out of the, 200, out of the 250,000 eligible voters, only about 125,000 voters. Don't get me actually, but only around 50% of the eligible voters voted in 2020. Now, with an African-American woman voting, and you get just 52%, 53%, 54%. We ain't talking about no Barack Obama numbers, but we're just talking about 52, 53, 54%. That makes it over. Detroit is the densest, most populous city in the state of Michigan. Biden won by 170,000 votes. You change the amount of African Americans that are voting for Kamala Harris, the ticket in Detroit, it is a wrap for Michigan. So you have Shapiro in Pennsylvania makes it a wrap for Pennsylvania. In Michigan, you make it a wrap for Michigan. And then you only then, again, have to win Wisconsin. And even now, North Carolina is in play. And they're even saying Florida is in play. I'm not talking about that, but they say that Florida is in play. So, but North Carolina is in play. So Harris at the top of the ticket is an extraordinary thing. So what are some things that we're going to expect to happen? Or before I say that, no, let's say that. We've already had Candace Owens and Marjorie Taylor Greene, B6, talking negatively about Kamala Harris already. I've already seen the Lincoln projects and other videos that have been created already. It's going to be hard for a convicted felon to run against a prosecutor. it's just going to be hard. It is really going to be hard for a convicted felon to run against a prosecutor.
You know, as many of you know, before I was elected as vice president, before I was elected as United States Senator, I was the elected Attorney General, as I've mentioned, of California. And before that, I was a courtroom prosecutor. In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. And in this campaign, I will proudly put my record against his. As a young prosecutor, when I was in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office in California, I specialized in cases involving sexual abuse. Donald Trump was found liable by a jury for committing sexual abuse. As Attorney General of California, I took on one of our country's largest for-profit colleges and put it out of business. Donald Trump ran a for-profit college, Trump University, that was forced to pay $25 million to the students it scammed. As district attorney, to go after polluters, I created one of the first environmental justice units in our nation. Donald Trump stood in Mar-a-Lago and told big oil lobbyists he would do their bidding for a $1 billion campaign contribution. During the foreclosure crisis, I took on the big Wall Street banks and won $20 billion for California families, holding those banks accountable for fraud. Donald Trump was just found guilty of 34 counts of fraud.
How stark, and that's what politics is about. It's about contrast. How stark is the contrast going to be? Okay? And so they're going to be using race. They're going to be using woman. But that only works. That's not really going to work on the people in the middle. The people in the middle are going to look at the contrast. And again, you're talking about 700,000 votes in 5 states. We don't need a lot. And I think that we're going to get more. I think that Kamala Harris is going to beat Donald Trump in 2024 worse than Joe Biden beat him in 2020. I believe that based on what I know about politics and how the race is going to set up. Now, here is the thing that I want you to be clear about on what we have to do. They're from AOC, who said that those that want to push out Biden also want to push out Harris. In addition to that, Roland Martin had already talked about the same thing. So for me, as far as I'm concerned, I believe that it is people on the left, Democrats, who want to get a whole nother ticket. Let me tell you why that will not work. If you try to jump over a black woman, some black people will not vote, and probably enough for you not to win. And here's what I'm going to tell you. I am destined to vote Democrat. But if Kamala Harris is not the nominee, I'm not doing it. There is, and I've heard this from voters, people in Detroit, African-American men, African-American women, other people that talk about Democrats taking African-American people for granted. And we're gonna see right now. When we said we needed a black woman on the ticket in 2020, that's what we got. There ain't no alternative, right? It's Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket, or you ain't getting no votes, right? That's it. That's the alternative. And we'll talk about other stuff later. That's how we want it. And you're not, see, people are not understanding the smoke that's already rising. There were 20 plus African-American women online already on a call where they raised $1.4 million. You see, because there are people that don't want Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket, and they're going to try to use the idea of fundraising as the reason why she can't be at the top of the ticket. But she is the person who is more likely to be able to get the $90 million that is sitting in the FEC account or the coffer because of what has been raised for the Biden-Harris campaign. She's more likely to get it before anybody else. Anybody else will have to start fresh. So they are all right. Listen, it was maybe an hour after Joe Biden. I was in church. It had to be less than an hour. My friend texted me and showed me the screenshots that Joe Biden had resigned or stepped out of the race. And then, like, in the same service, I received a fundraising text from Kamala Harris campaign team in the same service within 2 hours. And so I'm telling you, you don't understand that African Americans are going to be resolute about the fact that we want Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket. And also we are resolute that you're not going to overjump her with no one. I love Gretchen Whitmer. You can't tell me nothing bad about Gretchen Whitmer. I am from Michigan. She did a phenomenal job, has done and is doing a phenomenal job as the governor of Michigan during COVID, and what they have done afterwards, having all three houses of government, the governor's mansion, the Michigan House, and the Michigan Senate. Phenomenal legislation. This is what everybody should do, is what Michigan is doing. So you can't tell me nothing about loving Gretchen Whitmer, but it's not Gretchen Whitmer's time. Gavin Newsom is the slickest, coldest, most eloquent LA, California type that you could ever meet. He made for the movies. He's that. I mean, when I watch his rallies so that I can understand how it is that I need to, the information that he's given, I've absorbed and used when I'm talking to when I'm talking to people in the district and potential Democratic voters and voters in particular. So I love Gavin Newsom. I love Wes Moore. Brother, it's going to be the brother time when it's that brother time. You trust and believe it. If you don't believe that Wes Moore is going to be president of the United States at some point, you haven't seen Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland. He is as cool and as smooth and as articulate and as good luck. He's the bald-headed Barack Obama, the darker bald-headed Barack Obama. Okay? But understand that there is some push to have, or some beliefs that they can overjump Kamala Harris. And what we need to do is you, and here's our action steps on what we could do. We can say, listen, we're not voting for you if you're not supporting Kamala Harris, Senator so-and-so, or Congressperson so-and-so. And we can do that right now. Don't think that we are powerless. We're not powerless. We got to vote. And as long as we got to vote, we got power. And as long as we got some money, we got some power too. So I would advise you, I'm going to scrape together. Y'all know I don't got no money. And you know I'm broke. You know I'm always trying to fundraise to finish out until November the 5th, where unfortunately I'm going to have to run as a write-in, because when you start late like I did, and you don't have the financial resources, it's hard to run a campaign. And so I'm going to have to run as a write-in for the November 5th campaign. But as long as I can stay in the public eye and do what I'm doing to make sure that Democrats get elected down the ballot, I'm going to do it. I believe in this country. I love this country. I love my community. I love the people who I interact with, and I want to see them do good. And I know that a Republican anything, from president, governor, senator, congressperson, dog catcher, is bad for my community. And so I'm going to stay out there as long as I possibly can stay out there. Okay? So put together $5, $10, $20, and give it to Kamala Harris. You don't have to give a lot of money. If you got it, then fine. But you don't have to give a lot of money to Kamala Harris. You can give $5, $10, but if 1 million people give $5, that's $5 million. One call of around 20,000 women raised $1.4 million in less than 24 hours of her being endorsed by Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. And let me say this before I go. Let me say this before I go and talk about the next thing. I think about my Aunt Doll. I think about my Aunt Maynette. I think about my grandmother. I think about my mom. I think about my Aunt Sally Bell. I think about my Aunt Annie Jean. African-American women get it done. They get it done. You don't know the smoke. You don't understand what the AKAs are about to do. You don't understand. They putting their hair in the ponytail right now. You don't understand what's happening. They are mobilizing as we speak. I don't have no doubt. I don't have no doubt. That's what that call of 20,000+ women, and most likely was the AKAs. I don't know. I'll hear later. But you don't want no smoke with an African-American woman when it's time to get it done. They're going to get it done. She's going to be the president. Nikki Haley said the first 80-year-old to step down, that party is going to win the nomination, is going to win the presidency. People already know it's going to be an ugly thing, and African-American women are going to be at the tip of the spear. I promise you that. Knowing what I know, for instance, just for example, when Marjorie Taylor Greene said something about Jasmine Crockett's eyelashes, I already knew she was about to get eviscerated. I had seen my Aunt Doll do it. I didn't see my Aunt Maynette, Sally Bell, my grandmama. I didn't see all of my aunts do it. I didn't see my cousins who are women do it. I have seen them eviscerate somebody, and it only take 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 30 seconds. I already knew that Marjorie Taylor Greene was about to get smoked. It was about to be something ugly. Bad built, bleach, blonde, bad built, butch body. Now, if my aunt was doing that, she would have been smoking a Virginia Slim and drinking a Colt 45. Oh, okay. We are going to support Kamala Harris for president, and we're going to get her a good vice president. It doesn't need to be Gavin Newsom. We already got California licked. And Gavin Newsom is going to want to be president, so he's not going to want to be vice president right now. And it's going to work. And the thing that I haven't talked about is the abortion issue. Since the Dobbs issue, every time it's been on the ballot, it has been a winner for Democrats. This is the first presidential election where the Dobbs decision will have some impact on races in the United States. And so that's another plus for Democrats. So I'm not concerned about it. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves, and I will be working along with my campaign, but also working to make sure that Kamala Harris and whoever her VP is, they get elected. K-12 educators, are you looking for a way to increase the performance academically of your students and to improve their behavior so that they're able to be successful inside and outside the classroom? Well, if you are, I have an online course that is starting in the month of July. Stay tuned for details. For those of you who know my story, you know that I am a avid track and field enthusiast and a coach. That is the way that I get the opportunity to mentor young men and young women in the community to help them be able to sort out this thing called life. And there is a phenomenon in the track and field world right now by the name of Quincy Wilson. He is 16 years old. He is a rising junior. He's in between his sophomore and junior seasons of high school, and he is the youngest person to ever qualify, if I'm not mistaken, for the Olympics. He just ran 2 days ago 44.20 and has the second fastest time out of any man in America. And he will be running in the Olympics. And so culture-wise, to see this young man do what he is doing and to continue to run and beat men twice as old as him is truly, truly a phenomenal thing. And for those of you, he runs the 400-meter dash. He qualified for the relay pool. I think he came in 4th or 5th. And he is going to be running. There is a mixed relay, and there's also the men's 4x4 relay. I'm sure he's going to be running on the mixed relay, and he may even run on the men's 4x4 relay in the definitely in the prelims. But I'm going to be honest with you, being the second fastest man in America right now, he deserves to run in the gold medal race for the men's 4x4. Because he's the second fastest American this year. That's what I would do as the coach. I would always try and reward my athletes for performing well. This is a meritocracy. When you do something well, you deserve to be rewarded in some kind of way. And so that's what my reward would be for him. But in the track and field world, it's just incredible. It's just incredible. As a matter of fact, I saw him run last year at New Balance. Just a phenomenal talent. So make sure you check him out at the upcoming Paris Olympics. I don't think I'm going to be able to go this year. Messing with this campaign, I ain't got no money. So I'll be watching it on Peacock like everybody else who's here.
What can we not say about this youngster? He runs with the maturity of someone a decade older than him. I had the pleasure of interviewing him at the New Balance National Outdoors, where he won the championship boys 400. And I said, is there a chance we're going to see a sophomore on the start line in Paris? I said it not joking, but, with a little playful nod to him. And he said, of course there is. And he's made that absolutely come true. In the relay pool for that Olympic team, and he is just coming off his sophomore year in high school, and look at the poise. I mean, if there were ever a young Superman, this is him.
A lot of us were playing video games and maybe talking about the new college football game that came out. Meanwhile, Quincy Wilson's going to get ready to go to Paris with Team USA. Broke a 42-year-old world under 18 best when he ran 44.59 earlier this season. Bryce Deadman will also be in that U.S. 4x400 meter relay pool, a 27-year-old who got gold with the U.S. in Tokyo in the 4x400. He is the 2023 U.S. champion.
Coming off that 5th at this year's Olympic trials, 44.41 his best this season, 44.22 his best in his lifetime. He's getting awfully close to that with each race.
So Deadman and Wilson will get to run side by side. And Matthew Bowling will be in lane number 5 here in this field. The Georgia Bulldog, Texas-born sprinter who was a 2-time NCAA champion, picking up gold medals with the U.S. relay squads in Budapest, running the opening round of the 4x4. He was 8th at the Olympic trials in the men's 400, an event that included the now world leader, Quincy Hall, 25-year-old who comes in as the favorite into the Paris Olympic Games at 400 meters, 43.80. Another event where Team USA hopes to hear its national anthem played when the dust settles over 400 meters.
We'll talk about an embarrassment of riches. This relay pool certainly has that in spades. And that is a great problem to have, a great situation to find yourself in if you are the head coach of this squad. And there is the focus of, and it's hard to say this, but the veteran Bryce Deadman at only 27 years old, the youngster Wilson to his inside.
400-meter hurdle Olympian Trevor Bassett working on his speed on the outside in lane 9 here as well. A 2-time world champ with U.S. 4x4s. We're ready to go in the men's 400. And we're off and running in the men's 400. Christian Taylor jumps, concluding his career. Quincy Wilson's just getting started in his. And Bryce Deadman has the early lead on the youngster out there in 7.
Deadman making easy work of this first 200. Look at the advantage he has. 4th fastest time in the country this year, and this is exactly why. But never count out the youngster on his inside, because here comes Wilson Bowling making a move as well.
Quincy Wilson rewrites record books wherever he goes. Side by side with Bryce Deadman. Pushing for the line. Wilson and Deadman headed to Paris, and they meet the line at the same time. 44.2. Career best and a new world U18 best for the man from Bullis School in Maryland. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the summer of Quincy Wilson.
That makes him the 2nd fastest American this year. Another world best for the youngster, running with the maturity of an athlete over a decade older than him. And look at what this means to him. What can we not say about the future of men's 400-meter running in this country?